9:35 now. This is Delaware. I'm Peter MacArthur. It is Thursday, November 12th. 709,000 people applied for unemployment in the last week, according to new numbers just out within the hour from the Labor Department. Chris Burkhart, Placer Staffing, joining us. We check in with Chris frequently because, you know what? It's an important environment for people to have some good advice about job seeking. Chris, a couple of things. Let me hit you with a two-parter to start. And first of all, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us as usual.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Okay, first of all, the 709,000, your thoughts on that. That's part one. And B, we weren't really here to talk about this last week in terms of the election results, but now that they are more solidified, the job market in 2021 and beyond, considering what's happening in Washington right now.
Well, how much time do you have? So first things first, the 709, I think, is a pleasant surprise.
Yes.
As you might imagine, this is something that I sort of track. This is not what the pundits thought it would be. It's down 40 to 50,000. So I was really prepared to say jobs created and jobs lost were kind of canceling each other out, just like checkmate. And maybe the other piece here is that we had been fluctuating with 750 to 850,000 applying for these jobless benefits on a weekly basis over the last month. So this is a positive trend, and ironically, Peter, I found a couple of other good pieces of news.
Sure.
The first thing is those that were collecting unemployment benefits from the state programs, and of course right now there's state programs, there's pandemic programs, there's freelance programs, there's so many of them, but almost 600,000 people came off of unemployment.
Wow.
And I realize there's going to be people that think positively and negatively. To me, I see quite a bit of laid off workers that have been recalled to jobs or maybe landed in jobs elsewhere. Of course, some folks may have exhausted those state benefits and are not accounted in the number. But here's the best news of all. We haven't talked much about this, but we track job postings. I mean, let's face it, today, that's how businesses let the world know that they're looking for work. They put, instead of it being in the newspaper like it used to be, there's all kinds of ways to post your opening all over the internet on sites. And the interesting thing is job postings are up over 10 million. That's pre-pandemic levels of companies advertising for workers. Now, 10 million job postings, 12 million unemployed. We've got work to do.
Yeah.
That's not a great ratio. But what we're seeing is some interesting things. I've mentioned this a few times. My goodness, if you're in warehouse, logistics, shipping, or trucking, there are 5 times the job postings now than there were in February. And I think as a consumer, we see that. Have you tried to get a dishwasher lately or a car part? It seems like everything is on back order, and the world's trying to play catch up.
Yeah. What about as you look at the presidential election results? Listen, it's early, and there's no crystal ball here. But where do you think that positions us, perhaps, in terms of a job market next year?
Well, I'm pretty excited about that this time of uncertainty for businesses and policymakers is at least now behind us. And I think we're beginning to see a little bit of clarity. And what I expect and predict is stimulus for business, and that will create jobs. And I do also, I'm fairly confident that there will be some sort of help or stimulus for the job seeker. Things may be striking, this is not politically motivated, but we'll have an environment that business and the economy and the markets have confidence in, and there's enough checks and balances that it's not too far left or too far right. So I'm always an optimist, but I feel pretty good about the impact of things on business and ultimately those that are looking for work.
Speaking of looking for work, Chris, people might be really sizing up, considering where we are with the COVID especially, remote job opportunities. And it's a great idea to maybe let them in on what might be parameters associated with that before you just decide to jump yourself into a job you don't have to physically go to. There are things you need to take under consideration.
Well, remote work's been around a long time. It's just accelerated 10x this year. So I think it's such a relevant question and discussion because you might be out looking for work, and the only work you may find is a job that you thought you would do in an office, and then all of a sudden you got to work from your kitchen table or your spare bedroom. So I think there are things to consider. And first and foremost, work in another state, maybe be close to family, Peter, or maybe you always wanted to work in that remote family cabin or travel the world. But we've had this happen, and it's funny in hindsight, but not so funny. If your job is 100% remote, that's fine. But, man, if your job is 90% remote and you find yourself 3 states removed, we're hearing stories of that all the time. So you've just got to be crystal clear that you're not expected in that staff meeting and you're 500 miles away. Some things that I think folks probably think about, but are you disciplined? I mean, laundry, the TV, social media, they're all staring you in the face, and there's nothing to stop you in the short term from being distracted from those things.
Right.
It's much different in an office. And probably the thing we deal with every single day is, do you have dedicated space? There are many folks working from home trying to figure out how to work from that spare bedroom. Their spouse is probably at the kitchen counter. And, hey, that might work for 6 months or 8 months during a pandemic. We're all figuring that out. But there's nothing ergonomic about that. There's nothing good in terms of separating work and home and life. And, ironically, that's why there's this trend in people buying bigger homes and, adding rooms onto their homes. And they're all trying to figure out how to make that work. But if you do not have space, you're going to get pretty tired at sitting at your kitchen table trying to make this work.
Yeah, fantastic point. Absolutely. What if you are, Chris, an entrepreneur, maybe you're an independent contractor, and you think about that, some of those accomplishments you might rack up doing those kinds of jobs could be difficult to organize and get into like a resume. So how would you weigh in on the best ways to translate those skills and accomplishments to highlight for perhaps a new employer?
Well, that's probably a really interesting question for the audience, because what is a solopreneur or a small business owner doing going to get a job? Well, this pandemic has wreaked havoc on what is already a changing career path kind of system. Jobs and careers are really changing. And I don't think it's uncommon for someone to go between those roles, to work for someone, to maybe be a temp, to be a freelance gig worker, to maybe start a small business. But let's face it, there's a lot of businesses that the folks have decided that this isn't a great time to stay in it, just as it's a time that many have been started. So you have to overcome the stigma first. Are you going to get a job just until your business comes back? And, hiring managers must understand that the work today is different and that there's a real advantage to hiring somebody with entrepreneurial skills.
Yeah.
Now, related to the resume, if you're putting the title of president or small business founder or leader, you're not going to come up in very many searches when you try and go become an employee. However, the skills are, if you think about a small business owner and a solopreneur, you're doing everything from balancing the books to taking out the trash. You've got to make decisions. You've got to manage budgets. I think employers today need more of an ownership mindset in their employees, and it's really up to a professional or you to show how those skills that you've learned in running your own show can translate really effectively to being an employee.
Outstanding. Chris, great stuff today. I appreciate that very much. For people that listen and say, you know what, I think this guy might know what he's talking about. What's the name of his firm again? So
we're Placer Staffing. We're in Newark and Milford. Our website's easy. Just search myplacers.com. We've had a Placers Act of Kindness this year, which is our only goal was to leave you better than before you came to us. So if you need a resume, if you need some questions answered, if you need a lead on a job, if you just want somebody to talk to, just give us a ring, and we've got forms on the internet for those that prefer that.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate it.